More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. 4:15 from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios. Day number 1 of Eagles training camp in the books. And we also have, in the state of Philadelphia sports, some rumors with the Sixers and the Phillies. They win back-to-back series and a nice little series over the weekend by the Phillies defeating the Milwaukee Brewers. They'll welcome in the Houston Astros tonight. So let's go out to the ballpark right now and welcome in Jon Johnson, who covers the Sixers and Phillies and also talks a lot of Eagles on Sports Radio 94 WIP, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. John, always great to talk to you. Thank you for the time, and how are you?
Not a problem, Zach. How's it going?
Well, I'm going great, and I do appreciate you coming on today. Let's first start off with the Birds, since it is training camp day number 1. We all know that this season will be defined by the success and the improvement of the quarterback in Carson Wentz. What do you expect? What type of season do you expect out of the quarterback this year?
Well, I mean, I was very impressed with him in his rookie season. His stats don't necessarily indicate that. You'd look at it and say, oh, he was okay. He didn't really jump off the page for me. But I also looked at the roster he had around him, and he had nothing to work with. He didn't have any wide receivers. He had Jordan Matthews, who's a number 3 on a good team, but he's not a number 1. You had Nelson Aguilar, who's been an absolute bust in the NFL. You had a tight end in Zach Ertz, who doesn't show up until the latter half of the season. He didn't really have much of a running game, and he had Darren Sproles. So he had very little to work with, and his head coach didn't always put him in the best positions. So given all those fighting against him, in a sense, I was fairly impressed. I saw, he's very he commands in the huddle, and I saw a lot of upside moving forward. Now headed into this year, General Manager Howie Roseman, who made some questionable moves, but he wants to see his quarterback develop and refine and become that true franchise QB that they traded up for, bringing in a wide receiver like Alshon Jeffrey and on a prove-me contract, so I expect him to put up some great numbers, to Torrey Smith, who wants to prove that he belongs in the NFL as a starting wide receiver, to then LeGarrette Blount, who, though, has a lot of wear on the tires, will give you those bruiser yards and take some of the pressure off your young quarterback. So for Carson Wentz, I expect him to thrive in this offense. The question on the Eagles roster then becomes some question marks on the defenses, which may determine their wins and losses ultimately, and maybe their head coach's play calling. But Carson Wentz is the franchise quarterback in general. All the weapons are around him for him to thrive this year.
I agree with everything you just said in terms of the quarterback, but you did mention the coach, and the coach is an ambiguous situation for me. I don't know if he could be the guy, and there was some good with him in year number 1, and then there was also a lot of bad. With the coach, where's your confidence level that he will improve this year?
Oof, that is the big question. Headed into this season, despite some question marks at certain positions on the roster, my biggest question mark is the head coach. Can he progress? Because as nice as it was in his rookie season as the head coach to have some of those gutsy plays at crucial times that maybe you didn't see from Eagles coaches of the past, those gutsy plays became reckless in the second half of the season and at times seeming unnecessary. And there was no more evident times than when your coach, who's a former quarterback, putting his rookie franchise quarterback, in harm's way. See the plays that made no sense, that left him, exposed to big hits, and dropping him back 60-plus times on occasion last year. So his play calling is a huge question mark headed into this season. And the shelf life of an NFL coach now, 2 years seems like an adequate time now before you make a decision. Is he our guy or is he not? So Doug Peterson's absolutely on the hot seat, and he remains my biggest question as well.
When you define success this year for the Philadelphia Eagles, this is not a team that's ready to go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. We all know that. I'm skeptical to think and say that this is even a playoff team. But the way I opened up the show as we're talking to Jon Johnson, I defined success this year off 3 things for the Eagles. Number 1, the improvement out of the quarterback. Number 2, figuring out if Doug Peterson can be the guy. And then number 3, I think this team has got enough talent this year where they will be better than 7 wins a year ago. So with those 3 things being said, and let's attack the third one since we just attacked point 1 and 2 in the first 2 questions, how many wins do you see the Eagles this year? Because I think they should be better than 7, but I don't think it will be that big of a jump.
Yeah, Yeah, in reality, I look at the schedule. I look at the roster. Well, although as talented as it is, it has some shortcomings on the defensive side. Combined with three West Coast games, two of them back-to-back to where they'll stay out there. I hope for double-digit wins, but when I look at it now on paper, I see 9 wins. Now, my expectations, based on what Howie Roseman, general manager, did this offseason, he built this team to win while rebuilding the roster, I should say, while growing his quarterback. It was, when you bring in Alshon Jeffrey and then you bring in LeGarrette Blount as the icing on the cake, that's, the clear, you can't put it any more clear that he expects to win while building. So, based on what he did, I'm expecting them to win double-digit games. Whether that happens or not, well, that's another question entirely.
Yeah, but how can you expect that with what is at place at cornerback right now? That's why I can't see them getting to 10.
I have a lot of faith in Carson Wentz, and I know for those who don't watch him game in and game out, it's hard to say that because you may see a highlight here or there, or catch a game here and there, and he might overthrow a wide receiver or run a wrong route, or there's just miscommunication, just the rookie 101 mistakes that you see. But I also see how poised he is and how he commands the huddle, and when the situation presents itself, how I believe with talented wide receivers, and that's always the case. I mean, you can have a really good quarterback, but if they don't have wide receivers to work with, I mean, Tom Brady's the exception to that rule, and he's the only exception. So I truly believe he has the talent to be a very good franchise quarterback down the road, and with those weapons around him, I'm expecting double-digit wins. And again, it's all predicated not just on him, but the wide receivers doing their job.
But can the defense, can the
coordinator,
cornerback stop
and of
anyone?
course the head coach putting his quarterback in the right position to succeed.
Well, all fair on the quarterback, and I expect big things out of the quarterback this year, but let me just get back, and I'll ask it again. Just the cornerbacks of this team, that's the thing where I don't see them getting to 10 wins, because when you have this division, Odell, Des Bryant, Sterling Shepard, Brandon Marshall, Terrell Pryor, hey, the quarterback may be able to score you 28 points per game, but they're probably going to give up a lot because those corners can't defend anyone.
No, and then that's where when I sit back and I think in reality versus rooting as a fan, I say, yeah, I can't see 10 wins being that because you're going to have to win a shootout because your cornerbacks have more experience in the CFL than they do in the NFL,
Probably.
Which is so scary. And they drafted Sidney Jones, who before the injury was going to be a very high pick, but because of the injury, he falls to the second round. He's not going to play at all this season. So if you're looking at it from a Sixers standpoint, that's great. But the NFL, it's any given Sunday. You can turn a team around in one season. All the pressure is going to be on that front four. The Fletcher Cox getting that massive deal and adding some weapons around him to put the pressure on the quarterback. If they can't do that week in and week out, you're going to have to win games, 35-30.
Wrapping up with Jon Johnson, who joins us right now from Sports Radio 94 WIP. This is the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. John, let's go to the team that you'll be covering tonight, the Philadelphia Phillies. How about this kid, Nick Williams? He's been awesome.
He's been spectacular, and he's such a humble kid. He's enjoying the moment. Anytime you speak to him, he just says, I want to do what I can to help the team win. The most impressive thing to me, the way he can make contact and hit with power opposite field at such a young age with such a minimal Major League Baseball experience is so impressive to me. And it's a good thing for the fans and a bad thing for the Phillies organization because with the Major League Baseball trade deadline coming up at the end of the month, you have Nick Williams, who you want to see day in and day out now, as consistent hitting as he has been. You want to get a really good look at him the rest of the way. They just brought back Howie Kendrick from the disabled list. And Howie Kendrick's, although his season has been injury-ridden, is hitting over 350. So it's going to force the Phillies' hand to maybe they won't get back value-wise what they would expect otherwise if they didn't have to be in this situation. But it forces their hand. They have to trade him now by the 31st because you have to see Nick Williams every single night the rest of the way.
Is Tommy Joseph on this roster when the trade deadline comes and goes?
Ooh, that is of all the possible players to be dealt, he is the biggest question mark of the 50-50. You can go one way or the other. he's a starter in Major League Baseball. I truly believe that. And because of that, one of their highly touted prospects in Rhys Hoskins, who can hit with power, who plays first base, that is the reason he hasn't been called up to this point. You don't want to force your hand. Rhys Hoskins has hit a little bit of a slump in the month of July. He's not hitting that well, but that's the life of a power hitter. They go through those slumps. It's a 50-50 shot right now. I know there's interest in Tommy Joseph. It's a question of whether it's the type of value that General Manager Matt Klentak would want in return. And Klentak is not in a rush, despite what the type of numbers that some of the prospects are putting up in AAA and in some cases AA. General Manager Matt Klentak, he's not in a rush to bring any of these kids up. Even a guy like Hoskins, who's 24 years old, and you say this is the time you bring him up. He's either going to sink or swim at the major league level. You got to give him a chance. It's all going to hinge on what they do with Tommy Joseph by the 31st, and right now it's seemingly 50-50.
I think you have to trade him because, especially when, and I know that you don't make decisions this way, but Nick Williams comes up and he's been spectacular, and we'll see how long this lasts. But when he plays that well, and Klentak has not been having a good year, we all know that, I think you got to make that move to bring up Rhys Hoskins, because you said it. Yeah, Tommy Joseph is a starting first baseman, but I don't think he's a great first baseman. So that's why I would make the move, John.
Yeah, Rhys Hoskins' ceiling is far higher than what Tommy Joseph's is, and that's the reasoning behind it. This is what you built. You didn't build to be average. You built to be great.
All right, how about Odubel Herrera? We all know the base running has been a big problem. Some people get annoyed by the bat flips, but the guy's hitting in June and July with the averages when you look at June and July. How would you define this season for Odubel Herrera, John?
It's been very interesting. I'm trying to think of a particular word to characterize it. I mean, he's a bit of an enigma. He truly is. Because when you talk to him in the clubhouse, he's a real outgoing guy, fun-loving. But based on what you see him do on the field, some of the boneheaded plays or just things that make you scratch your head, you say, does this guy take this seriously enough? And being handed a fairly lucrative, not really a lucrative deal, but getting a contract before he really needed to get one, that 5-year deal that the Phillies handed him, may play a part in it. Sometimes just guys that it doesn't click in their head mentally until they hit a certain point. But he's been a heck of a lot better as of late, and he's hustling and he's running out, even if it's a ground ball or a pop-up. So we're seeing improvement. I like Odubel a lot, and I love the one thing that baseball is direly missing is players with character that bring out their personalities, and that's one thing that Odubel does, whether it's the bat flip or just acting goofy. And I know baseball it's always been played a certain way for as long as it has now, and it's always been this way, and you can't stray away from it. It's nice to see that personality come out, which represents the times, just changing with everything. And that's one thing baseball doesn't do. It represents an older model of sports past, but whether you're bred into it or families or whatever, baseball needs to adjust to the times. Is what I'm getting at, and Odubel Herrera, in a sense, represents that.
I'll end you on this because I know you got to run as we're talking to Jon Johnson, and it's a premature question, but one that has had a lot of speculation, and we've been speculating about it over the last few days. LeBron James to the Sixers. How much of a chance do you give that one?
As if we stand here right now, it's a pipe dream. It's great that LeBron James has the Ben Simmons connection, and it's great that LeBron James has been great friends to one of the Sixers trainers for many years. Combined with him being unhappy in Cleveland, and you look and you prognosticate a year from now who in the East would be a true contender, so many things have to go right for the Sixers, even for that possibility to happen. Joel Embiid has to play 60-plus games, and we know what he's capable of, but he has to stay healthy. Ben Simmons has to be everything we hope that he is. Markelle Fultz has to be everything that we hope that he is. And, oh, by the way, you probably have to make the playoffs to draw LeBron's attention. So unless all of those are fulfilled, those are your requisites. If all that happens, maybe you get an interview. There's a possibility, and then you could start talking about percentages. But you can't look ahead beyond this season yet. There's still a ton of question marks surrounding the Sixers team.
John, great stuff. We appreciate it as always. Thank you.
Not a problem.